Hello, I'm Jim Miller. Terrence and Reggie have the night off. The FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. Tonight we're here to talk about, well, not a pleasant topic, and that is the topic of fraud. With me tonight, I have Tracy Rotz with Sullivan Select Real Estate. She's a realtor there. And I have Devin and Brandy Stamen, who are hopefully going to be homeowners here real soon. Yeah. But their plans have been interrupted by some significant fraud. Let's start with that. Tell us what happened.
Sure. So the week of closing, we were needing, obviously, to provide a down payment for the home, and due to timing, it was a quick closing, so we were going to wire some of the funds to make the closing happen in time. And I should point out also that this happened right before Memorial Day, which will be an important piece of the story. And we get to the closing table, and they are asking, okay, we haven't received your wire yet, what's going on? And I was like, oh, well, I sent that, and your employee replied to me yesterday saying they received it and everything was good. And they were like, okay, so they got that employee on the phone. Well, it turned out that it wasn't that employee emailing me. It was some scammer who was able to get access to all of our information and represent themselves as an employee of the closing company. And they were able to provide fraudulent wiring instructions to an account that wasn't with the settlement company. So unbeknownst to us, this had already happened. We were at closing before we found out and realized that $75,000 was gone. And
Wow.
We weren't really sure where it went.
So you were at the closing table. How far had you gotten? How close were we to walking out the door?
We had signed almost all of the paperwork, I believe.
We had the keys.
Yeah, we had the keys.
Yeah, I had my commission check, so.
Yeah.
Yep, we were done.
That is uncashed at this point, right?
Yeah, not cashed.
So what happened next?
So we frantically made a lot of phone calls, of course, to our bank, and then to a different bank, the bank that the money went to hopefully maybe catch
Recover.
it early.
What is the time frame between when you sent the deposit or when you sent the wire to actual closing? How many days is that?
2.
Yeah.
2 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the banking system today, plenty of time to get rid of the money and
Correct.
hide it. Okay, so I'm sorry, you called your bank.
Yeah, we frantically made calls to both banks that were involved in the situation, and our bank started to initiate a recall of funds to the other bank. Unfortunately, by the time we were able to really fully get a hold of everyone that we needed to, it was 5 o'clock on Friday before Memorial Day. So we weren't really able to get much traction and just had to wait out the whole holiday weekend without knowing really what was going to happen next.
What was going through your mind at that point?
I think we felt numb and shocked, to be honest. You just go into survival mode, and that's honestly, mostly where we've been for the past month and a half or so, because it takes a while for something like that to fully settle in what actually just happened.
And what were you selling a house otherwise, or were you living in an apartment at that point, or what were your living arrangements prior to this?
We were currently living in a rental. Unfortunately, we had already we were actually slated to move out that weekend. So we already told them that, hey, we're buying a house. So we did not renew our contract. So after we found out we lost the house, we had to scramble to find a place to live, and then pack everything up, move it into storage. And then try to keep our heads above water, trying to navigate the situation.
So it's costing you more money to rent, so I'm sure they already rented your apartment by the time you were ready to move out.
Yes.
Wow. Talk to us about how the law has been involved. What's going on with this? Who's trying to catch these people?
Yeah, there is a detective that is involved, and he is doing a great job for us investigating this to the full extent that he's able to. And so we're really grateful for his help because, with limited resources, sometimes with law enforcement, what seemingly is, not a small amount to us, but usually smaller fraud cases like this don't go fully investigated.
75,000 is a small fraud case?
According to the government, I guess, because the FBI, we've filed a report with them and they have yet to even call us, so.
Wow. They have a different definition of small than I do, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you called the FBI. Have you been in touch with any other law enforcement agency?
So Washington County Sheriff's Department.
Okay, so
and
and
then
that's where the
FBI.
detective is that's working on it?
Yeah.
And so do we know where the funds are? I know you don't know exact account, or we'd be able to maybe get them back, but do we know, are they in country? Are they out of country?
He says the likelihood that the money is gone permanently is very high. So even if he's able to press charges against this person, the odds of us recovering it are very low.
What was the interaction with the receiving bank like? Because I was in banking for quite a long time, and I can imagine my reaction if somebody just told me that my bank was hosting an account that was being used for fraudulent purposes. I'm not asking, don't want you to mention the bank, but tell me what the reaction was there. Was it what you expected? Was it what you hoped for?
Their fraud department hung up on us 4 different times on 3 different phones. Wouldn't even complete the phone call.
Because was it
We
getting heated?
we weren't an account owner with them. So we called the fraud department, said, "Hey, this is the account number. This is the account holder, all the information for the account," because we had everything, the routing number, the account number, and everything, and said, here it is. This person, there's fraudulent activity involved in this account, in this transaction, and as soon as we got to that point, they would hang up on us.
So they wouldn't offer alternatives about how they could provide information, or whether, to tell you to go get the police involved and they can officially request information, nothing.
No. We actually ended up driving to the closest branch, which was an hour away, to talk to someone in person, because we just couldn't even have a full conversation because they kept hanging up on us. And we know that it was not our phones, because we tried several different phones to see if it was the case, and it was them hanging up on us.
Once you got to that point, they hung up.
Every time.
Wow.
And it was their fraud department. Like, once you got to the fraud department, the department that you would think would handle it, take an interest, nothing.
Talk about customer service.
Yeah.
Or talk about no customer service. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So, where are you today? Where are you in terms, let's talk living quarters first. Where are you today? And not an exact address.
Yeah.
Yes, please state your address and
A little gunshot personal information.
what time you won't be home, so that others that are listening. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Well, finding housing that allows us to take 2 medium to large dogs with us is quite
Challenging.
a hard feat at a moment's notice. Luckily, before we knew for sure that we would be buying a home, we had put feelers out there with different furnished midterm rentals just to see if that would be an option for us. And we did have one person who was willing to rent to us month to month while we completed our home search process. And this person is very nice, because we called them that Friday night. She had a person coming to look at the place the next day, and she said, "You know what? You guys need it. We're going to let you have it. Just send the money for the first month's rent, and the place is yours." So that was a godsend, because we had somewhere to go. We had a safe place to be. We could keep our dogs with us. So she's been, they've been wonderful to help us.
And so, so you're on a month-to-month basis with them. Do you see an end in sight? What is the plan going forward?
We are still holding out a lot of hope that this will move forward with the Oak Hill house, and that this will be our last month there. We're hoping.
And I understand from talking with Tracy that folks have stepped up to assist you. Talk about that a little bit.
You want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah, no, Tracy and the sellers, they've been very gracious. They've been patient with us and worked with us to try to make this a possibility, and started a GoFundMe for us.
Wow.
and to generate some income to help replace what had been lost. So that's still ongoing, and yeah, we're kind of just crossing our fingers and hoping. And
So what is the, I'm sorry, remind me again of the amount that you lost in the,
$75,000. And then the bank said they were going to return $3,000, but then found out later that was not the case as well.
now, which bank? Was that not the one that hung up on you, right?
Yeah, our bank told us that they were able to retrieve $3,000, but apparently that's not the case, because they got a letter from them just the other week stating that there's no funds to be returned.
So they changed their story.
Yeah.
How was your bank to deal with?
Not
Terrible.
great. Yeah. The gentleman who was running my took this case. I've talked to him twice in like 6 weeks, and I've called multiple times stating I needed to talk to him, and just doesn't want to call me back. So then I finally got a hold of a supervisor who said that they had to go to an executive, but that'd take 5 to 10 business days for them to talk to me.
And has it been 5 to 10 business days?
It's been about 5 days now, and still haven't heard anything.
Okay.
So
How are you guys holding up?
Like I mentioned
Yeah.
before, survival mode, I guess is the
Yeah.
way to explain it. Because it's an exhausting process. Every day you spend, calling the banks, calling the detective, talking to, trying to find, possibly a lawyer to help us with this whole process. I mean, every day it's a new phone call while we're trying to work our full-time jobs and figure out our living situation, and living 45 minutes further than, any of our family and friends. And so it's exhausting, and not having your bank make the process any easier, having all these setbacks, it's been awful, to be honest.
How long have you been married?
8 years.
8 years. We've been together 10.
Okay. Well, you'll have some good stories for your kids if you have children, right?
And PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you about this one.
Yeah.
This is better than walking. This is better than walking to school and back in the snow and your bare feet uphill both ways, right?
Yep.
This is real.
Yeah.
Tracy, how do you fit into this?
So I was the listing agent, so I represented the sellers in the transaction.
So
and-
you weren't representing this couple.
No, I
You
was
were
not.
representing
The
person
sellers.
is okay.
Yeah, the sellers. And so they extended the contract twice, the sellers did, to, we all really wanted to, Devin and Brandy to get the house. And so so they wanted them to, but, at the end it kind of was like, well, they're in the business of selling houses, remodeling them and selling them, so they couldn't hold it out forever. So so seller and I started talking, and we started thinking, there's got to be something that can be done, because they lost $75,000, they lost a house they were going to buy, and they lost the place they were going to live. So it just and for me it felt like it was happening right before my very eyes, because right before they realized that there was wire fraud, seller and them had been talking about, the stories that they had heard about the house, and you all had said, like, we hope to live there for 50 years. And that was very impactful to me, that, they just had a lot of bad things happen. So seller and myself got together, and we decided to call Brandy and see if we could start a GoFundMe and just see where we're at. See what we could do.
Where are we on the GoFundMe today?
Yeah, we're at 40,000, I think 870. Is that where we're at? So we're making progress. So
Out of 75.
out of 75.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is absolutely
The
amazing.
community really has reached out, and it's been mostly, obviously online, but there's been people giving private donations as well, and so it's been very encouraging.
So how do we find the GoFundMe account?
It's on the GoFundMe website, as well as Tracy's professional Facebook page.
Yeah, my Facebook page has the link to the GoFundMe, or you can probably look up just Devin and Brandy Stamen.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's how. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we have some more questions, but I'm going to take a break right here. I hope you'll stick around for another segment. All right. Stay with us. We'll be back after this commercial break. Welcome back. Once again, we're here with Tracy Rotz, Realtor with Sullivan Select, and Devin and Brandy Stamen. You talked about some of the players in the process, and it sounds like they weren't there to support you. And I don't know that there was anything they could do other than help to the extent that they could. But it sounds like you literally got hung up on from one of the banks. Talk to us about, again, not naming names, talk to us about the bank, the settlement company, the other bank, and what they did or didn't do. We know the one bank hung up on you. What was your experience with your bank?
They, minimal communication this whole time. They won't even give us a direct phone number to talk to the person who's working on this, case, I guess I'll call it. We can't even speak to them directly. We have to call an intermediary who relays the information to them, and then, it's like a game of telephone.
Tag.
So they've done this to him repeatedly, where they won't call us back, they won't talk to us directly. They changed their story. They said, yes, it took us 3 weeks to get them to say, yes, you're getting $3,000 back. And so we said, okay, can we get that in writing, please? And they said, yeah, we'll have that in 7 to 10 business days. Took longer than that to send us the letter. And then when we got the email with the letter in it, saying, hey, it was supposed to say we were getting $3,000 back, they said, we don't have anything to give you back. So they're changing their story from what they had said 3 weeks prior. I mean, it's been the absolute worst experience I've ever had.
And the dates that they put in the letter to keep track of how everything went were all completely wrong in the letter I received as well. Because we called on the 24th, and when I was talking to them on the phone, they stated that we're going to we'll put in to have the money transferred or returned, and that was going to be the 24th. Well, once I got the letter, it said they didn't request the money back till the 29th. So everything was just pushed back. So then whenever I called to try to figure out, okay, what's the actual story, they doubled down and said, oh no, it was definitely the 24th whenever we requested the money back, but I have it in writing now stating the 29th. They said, like we said, we were supposed to get $3,000 back. They said there's nothing left to get. What else? It's just every step of the way. We felt like we've been lied to, betrayed, and just ignored. They just want us to go away. That's how it feels, at least. And
we've gotten that message from essentially the settlement company as well. They've been they kind of washed their hands of us as quick as they could and claimed no fault in the whole thing. And when I asked, through email, how do you know that this, wasn't on your end? They quit emailing me back altogether. So.
I know there's been, obviously we talked about the GoFundMe, and we've talked about some support that you've got. Talk about the people involved in the transaction that have supported you in this effort.
So of course Tracy here has been our biggest supporter. When she called me, it took us off guard completely. We were not expecting this help in any means. And I was just blown away at her. I cried when she called and initially offered to help us, because she was really one of the first people to actually extend a hand to help us in this whole process.
And the homeowner has.
And yes, absolutely. And the homeowners as well have been just, if we were buying a house from anyone else, this would not have nearly turned out how it has. It would have turned out, we would have lost the house forever, and that would have been that. So I can't believe how wonderful they've been to us and how much they've been willing to work with us, because, like I said, if it was anyone else, it probably wouldn't be even a possibility.
I'm going to make an assumption here, which is a bad thing to do, but you're a reasonably young couple. Coming up with $75,000 for a down payment probably wasn't easy in the first place. I'm assuming that this purchase, while you may have just found the house, the purchase was long planned.
Yeah.
Talk about the sacrifices you made throughout the process to make sure that you had that down payment.
So we, it would take us a lifetime probably to save that money up again. We had owned a home previously, but we had put a lot of money into that home, and so we had saved every dime of what we were able to get from that sale to buy our next place to live. So it, like I said, it would take us a fortune to save that money back up because, we're not wealthy people by any means, who just have that sitting around to lose. So.
Yeah, I made the statement, like, I feel like I just worked the past 10, 15 years for nothing. And so I feel like I'm back to square one again.
When you are able to clear $75,000, you actually have to make a lot more than $75,000 for taxes. So
That's exactly right.
to lose $75,000 is actually way
To
more.
replace it is
way more.
80, 90, 100, depending on your tax bracket or
Yeah,
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Obviously, there's one thing you would do differently, and that's check the email address of where you were sending the. But what else have you learned in this process? What can others who are watching the show learn from the two of you as victims of fraud?
We were told that this is more likely to happen before a holiday weekend because they know the banks are closed on that day. So that's one less day we have to take action. So if you are, closing on a home or having any sort of financial transactions before a holiday, be extra careful. Avoid wiring money at all if you can possibly avoid it. Like I said, we did just because of the turnaround of closing and we wanted it to happen on time. But if you can find other ways, do that. And then also call the settlement company to verify everything before you send it. Because then they'll be able to say, oh no, I didn't email you, this is actually the correct information. And they'll be able to catch it in that moment. So those were probably some of the biggest takeaways that we received.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing was apparently they will not send routing instructions for wires unless it's a secure email where you have to sign in or something like that, not just a standard PDF.
That would have been nice to know.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is a lot of times I've been hearing a lot of stories of people almost getting scammed, and one of the things they do too is they put their email signature with their phone number, but just go on Google and Google the settlement company or whoever and make sure it's the right number too, because I've been hearing that that's a common thing. So you call and you confirm, but it's not the settlement company or whoever you think you're talking to. So.
Well, that's absolutely true. And it's amazing. You talked about carbon copied people. Depending if they, and I'm not saying they did get hacked, we don't have that information, or at least I don't have that information. But if they did, there's ways, Microsoft rules in Outlook, you can set it up so that, I might carbon copy the CEO of the settlement company, but then put a rule in his account if I've hacked his account to say, if this email comes in, delete it immediately. Which I've seen happen, frankly, obviously not related to your case, but I've seen that happen before. These scammers are very good at what they do, unfortunately. I wish they would use their talents for constructive purposes.
Something good.
Yeah, I think fraud often is talked about as people tend to prey on the elderly when it comes to this stuff. You hear about that a lot, but really it's not. I'm 36 and he's 40, and it happened to us, and we're educated, fairly tech savvy people, and so that's how good these people are. I mean, a lot of times it's easy to say, oh well, how could you not know to call the settlement company and double check these things? But to Tracy's point, they could put fraudulent information in the email and you wouldn't even know it. And on top of that, it's a busy time. You're getting ready to move. You're sending the mortgage company stuff, you're setting up your electric, there's a lot going on that week of, and the scammers know that. So they know you're not maybe, going to be catching the small details as easily as you would, especially if you don't wire money all the time. We rarely do that. We rarely are in the home buying process and never will be again probably after this. But, there's things that just aren't as obvious to the average person. So, that's I think my biggest thing that I keep saying is just be aware, because they are very advanced at their scams. They know how to run it and not even get detected until way after the fact.
What have you learned as a real estate professional? I know bank transactions, you're involved in those closings, but certainly you're not responsible for them and any of the financial pieces of it other than showing up, right?
Right.
But what have you learned? How will you improve your due diligence as a result of these this circumstance?
Yeah, I think as an agent, I had something like this almost happen about 5-7 years ago, and my buyer called me and said, you know, this amount is wrong, and I said, hold up, we're not doing anything, and we figured out it was a scam. So I think as an agent, I think that being very vigilant and understanding that your buyers and your sellers, they don't do this every day. So it's not something that they're looking out for. They have a lot of people needing a lot of information for them right away. And so I think it's, if they have someone by their side saying, hey, wait a minute, now's the time to do this, now's the time to do that. And then also, I think in general, if someone calls you and they need information, hang up the phone, tell them you'll call them later, Google the number, call back. All those things are just really important, and I think just trying to, you know, communicate a lot with your buyers and your sellers and say, you know, hey, what's going on here? Who are you hearing from? That kind of thing, I think can just maybe help avoid, you know, a bad situation. So.
Yeah. Other than the almost, have you ever seen this happen before?
Absolutely not.
And of course, you weren't advising Devin and Brandy because you were representing the seller,
Yeah.
not the buyer.
That's correct. Yeah. No, it was sad. It was like you're literally watching a train wreck before your very eyes, and you're thinking, this can't be real. Like, there's no way it can be real, but it really was, and they handled it amazingly.
Yeah, I got to say, I know it's a month and a half past, but I would not be near as calm as the two of you are had this been.
They were calm that day. And that really stuck out to me because I didn't feel calm, and it wasn't my money, my house, my place I had to move. But they handled it beautifully, and it just, you know, they made an impact on me just seeing that. So.
Do we have a notion as to how they knew that it was $75,000? Is there proof of that? And I won't ask you to speculate, but is there, because they asked for the exact amount that you were going to, is that true?
No, they didn't ask for the specific amount.
Oh, so you, okay.
So they just were acting as if they were an employee of the settlement company who had received an email from prior, like I guess originally, you know, at the beginning of this process. And they said, you know, hey, just following up. They knew we would be sending money. They didn't know exactly how much. And I never even said the amount. I don't believe so in my email. I never gave figures or anything in the email. I kept it very vague.
Okay. Wow. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think one of the reasons it was important to us to do this show, honestly, is to get the word out there, because we don't want this to happen to anyone else. And if we can prevent that, you know, at least one more good thing has come out of this terrible situation. I want to talk about it over and over again to everybody, you know, and even the conversation, I think, and Tracy can probably speak on this more, in the real estate community around here, everyone's aware of what happened, and hopefully that will help empower the realtors to advise their clients even more. And so this, you know, hopefully the outreach really makes it harder for these people to do this again from, you know, from a preventative standpoint.
I know that you said earlier that the sheriff's deputy or the detective that's working on this said it's unlikely you'll see your money back. But when we get to the bottom of this, when we have an official report, I hope you would come back on the show and share that with us, because I would love to hear how this story ends. And I would also love to hear that you're at a new house and and that
Yeah.
all is right with the world.
Yeah, we
so you
would
can
love
get
to
on
do
with
that.
life.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
hoping for that outcome. We can't wait.
So, and when do we think that might happen? It sounds like we still need some more contributions, and we talked about the GoFundMe. If anyone is interested in providing some additional assistance there, what is the goal? How long has the seller agreed to hold on?
We've been on for, I think, about 2 weeks, and it's July 18th is the end. That was our cutoff date, and we're giving it our best shot.
So we have, today is July 10th that we're filming, so we have 8 days.
We have 8 days.
To raise another, hopefully, $35,000, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. So on the GoFundMe, I got to ask you, are there a lot of small donations? What are you seeing coming in?
That's blown us away as well. It's donations of all sizes, and they all add up. I mean, it's amazing to see how fast, these amounts add up. And people, our friends and family, of course, have been super supportive, but people we've never met before that we have been over the top generous, and we can't say thank you enough to them because they don't know us. They've just heard our story, and it means literally the world to us. It's one of the things that has probably helped us get through this.
It's interesting because I feel like I've seen the worst of the society has to offer now, but at the same time, I'm starting to see the best of it as well.
Yeah.
So it's eye-opening. It's very easy to become bitter, very easy to become jaded. But when you see everybody else kind of just supporting you out of the goodness of their heart, it gives you hope.
Well, now that all four of us are watery-eyed, let's proceed with our interview. I will say, just meeting the two of you, I am sure this will be a pay-it-forward movement for opportunity for you going down the road. And you're already doing that, appearing here, talking about an error that you made in trusting, an email. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
And we do want to hear the rest of the story. So that's a condition of airing the show. Is we want you to come back when you're building. Maybe we can do a remote filming and you can give us a tour of your new house when that happens.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That'd be cool.
And thank you and
No, thank you, Jim.
and Cynthia for that. We have more questions about real estate, but I think we have learned what we need to learn. Is there anything else we need to know from this transaction?
Just be careful, do your due diligence, share the word with other people that might not be seeing this story. Maybe they haven't seen this episode, but you now know. Please share with 5 other people, because if we can get that out and prevent this from happening, that would be our ultimate goal.
Okay. Well, thank you again. Stay tuned. When we come back, we'll have more about real estate on the flip side. Welcome back to the show. Well, Tracy Rotz is still with us from Sullivan Select Real Estate Agents. Tracy, thank you for sticking around. Let's talk real estate. Talk about the market first. How would you describe the current state of the real estate market in Washington County and the surrounding areas?
Yeah, I think it's still, despite the high interest rates, I think it is still pretty busy. I knew new home builders, they're just selling as quick as they can build, pretty much.
So we do have new home inventory coming into play as well.
We do. We do.
In terms of the trends in property prices, sales volume, inventory levels, and interest rates, where are you seeing that? What has happened over the last several months?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the different price point and the availability of what you see, but obviously interest rates are higher than they were a couple summers ago, and a lot of people, they refinanced during COVID, or they got a bigger place, and it was the same mortgage payment. So a lot of people aren't wanting to move if they refinanced and locked in at 2.5%, where right now we're at 6.5 or 7.5. But the different as far as the inventory, it's it's hard to get a good house right now.
And are you seeing, so there are people that are the people that locked in to their current homes, you're saying you're not seeing them moving.
We're not.
Is there, comparatively speaking, how bad or how difficult is it to find something that's already built?
It's pretty difficult. So especially if you're in like the 400,000 and under range, those houses, if you're a seller, those houses go very fast because a lot of people, they locked in and they're not selling. So so that's where we see the new home buyers, they're kind of like going to more of the new home builds.
And what if you were to look at, let's say, a 2,000 square foot house in a new home? What would I find in terms of, what can I get for $400,000 or less?
Yeah, well, it depends on the lot size, where you want to be. But if you're talking like a new home build, $400,000 is going to buy you a an entry-level single family probably.
So by entry level, is that maybe 1,700, 2,000 square feet?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So the 400,000 and above, then, what is the situation with those houses? Obviously, they don't move as fast, but is the inventory out there for those?
It is, and there's more houses available, and they may sit a little bit longer, but the new home builders don't seem to be building, some of the, back in the early 2000s, you would see all the brick fronts or the brick sides, and you see a little water line there, but it's a little bit, things are more expensive right now. But they are saying lumber's coming down, the prices on that, so we're going to see things kind of stabilize a little, hopefully soon.
As you look out into the future, is there a correlation, or has there been a correlation in the past between presidential elections? Do things heat up in the real estate market either just before or just after?
Yeah, I think people tend to kind of hang tight during an election. They just kind of want to figure it out and see what's going to happen. So around that time, we kind of see things take a little bit of a pause, but there's still people that have to move, and so we're still seeing a good bit of sales.
There was a lot of movement, as I understand it, as a result of the work from home effort. People that were living in the city were able to move out to more attractive neighborhoods like, Washington County.
Yeah.
And now we see, if only because all of these companies have all this commercial real estate that they're into 5, 10, 15-year leases for, are saying, come back to work, come back to the office. Are you seeing any of that reverse, so that people are now moving back towards the city, or they're looking to limit their commutes again?
No, I haven't noticed that. I think a lot of jobs have stayed at home, and I think some of the employees are saying, come back to work, or you need to work at least this many hours. But a lot of the people, they upsized their home, or they did a big renovation during that time, so they're kind of happy where they are.
What advice would you give first-time home buyers in today's market?
I would say that, save on something that is going to last. I think a lot of people want to buy the fancy car, and they want to buy, things that really
Depreciate?
Depreciate fast. Yes. So I would say, if you can save, you're really, really going to be ahead. Like Brandy and Devin, they saved and they put their money into their house, and then when it went to sell, they had a lot of equity that was able to really, really help out. Whereas if they would have bought, cars and cell phones and things like that, they wouldn't have gotten anything for it. So,
from a seller's perspective, what strategies would you recommend to a prospective seller to make their property more attractive to a potential buyer?
Yeah, well, as you know, I work for Cynthia Sullivan, and the one thing that she says, and I totally agree with her, is when you're driving up to a house, you pretty much size it up. That buyer sizes it up within about 10 seconds. When they're walking up to the door, if the landscaping is not pristine, if the doorknob is broken, if even the welcome mat is sort of not good looking, they already start to think these people don't care about the home. If I am interested, I'm going to offer way less. So I think it's very, very important to have the curb appeal and the entryway really good, and have it smelling good too.
Okay, smelling good. So we should bake.
Us women, we care about that.
We should bake bread before.
Bake cookies, bake the bread. Yes.
There's been a lot of churn in the economy, and if my friend Terrence were here, he would say winter is here, meaning that we're in an economic downturn. How have recent economic factors such as interest rates, inflation, impacted the real estate market as you see it?
I mean, I think it's definitely slowed things down, for sure. I think that people cannot buy what they could a little while ago, and so it's painful. It hurts. And I think that everything, the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, everything, it just, it all adds up, and families are trying to save and trying to, make a life for themselves, but it's a lot more expensive right now, so.
Are there, there's a lot of things that are happening in and around Washington County, some of which may have an impact, some others may not. I'm not sure the baseball stadium is going to help sell real estate, but I
We'll
think it's
see.
a great thing that we have a baseball stadium. I think it's a
We'll
great
see.
thing that we did the Maryland Theater, that we continue to expand University Systems of Maryland at Hagerstown, and all of the other wonderful things that are happening. On the downside of that, there's been a continued issue with water supply and supplying water to some of these new developments, and the fact that we are apparently, at least it's reported, that we have some potential capacity issues, so we're having to limit that. Do you see any upcoming developments or changes in the local infrastructure that could affect the real estate market or property values?
So I think it depends on what they're building. You know, if you have an all brick community and then right next door there's, you know, entry level homes being built, obviously it is gonna affect it's gonna affect your property. You know, the appraisers, they're pulling, you know, from basically a 3-mile radius, and if your house is comparable at all, you know, it could bring down the value. It depends, you know, but it could bring it up too.
So it's location, location, location,
Yes.
as my commercial lending folks used to say.
Yes, it's so true.
What are some of the best opportunities for real estate investment in the area right now? Should we be house flipping? Should we be buying duplexes and renting out half? Should we be buying, you know, the under 400, the over 400? What would you recommend in terms of somebody that's looking to make that move? And I know budget has something to do with it.
Yes, budget does, for sure. So what I would say is with house flipping, I think that a lot of people, even during COVID, they thought, well, I can still work from home and buy a house, interest rates are low, and fix it up. I think you have to be really careful fixing up houses for other people. You know, you really have to know what you're doing. I've seen some pretty lousy renovations. So I think you have to be careful about that. But if you're willing to put the time into it, and you know, I don't know that it's always fun, and I think sometimes HGTV makes things look a little more fun than they actually can be. So I think it's a great thing, but it's not a side hobby. It's a everyday job. I think you have to make that. And then as far as investing, like in a rental market, my suggestion would not be to buy the $400,000 house to rent it out. I would go with something cheaper. And the good thing is about rentals are, if the economy goes up, people can't afford to, you know, if housing prices go up, housing prices are more expensive. So your first-time home buyers can't afford it, so they need rentals. If the market goes down and you see a bunch of foreclosures or short sales, people need rentals. So the rental market is very strong, and but I would say keep it not at 400,000. You don't want to buy the fanciest house.
Okay.
So.
And maybe you don't have this information because this is tangential to what you do on a daily basis, but if someone is considering renting versus buying, where do you see that, the point at which they really need to consider buying rather than renting? Because, I mean, my father used to always tell me renting is a crazy thing to do because you're paying someone else's mortgage. And the reality is, having a son that is renting right now, his rental payment is almost what my mortgage payment is. How do you address that?
So I think it depends on your situation, like how long-term you want to be, how much maintenance you want to have, all that. But I definitely would say that buying over renting, if you can afford it, if you plan to be somewhere long-term, is definitely longer-term going to, you know, benefit your financial future.
What does a day in Tracy Rotz's business life look like? And I ask that because I know when you and Cynthia were representing me, you'd bring clients out at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 9 o'clock at night. Is there such a thing as a normal day for a realtor? What does it look like?
No, there's no such thing. You have to be flexible, and you never know what a day may bring, because you're going to meet so many different people, talk to so many different people, and everyone's situation is different. Just like Brandy and Devin, I went to go to settlement and just watch everyone sign and get my commission check, and that was going to be the end of that. And we all know that was
How'd
not,
that work out for
you? It didn't. It didn't. I have to say, I've never gone to a settlement and not had the property settle. That was the first. So, but I think you just, you just
kind of get creative and try and think outside the box. I think that's the big thing. So, but it can be busy, and it can be, some days are a little bit slower, and you just have to take it how it comes. So
I was amazed a month or so ago when I went to get a price to put a new roof on my house that, yes, the contractor went up on the roof and looked around, but the other thing they did was there's some company that I guess uses GIS images or something and know exactly what my roof looks like and can do a quote without ever having shown up. How has technology changed what you do in real estate on a day-by-day basis?
Well, I think it makes it a lot easier, because we can do, way back when, this is before I was in real estate, you had newspaper ads or, the local little house, magazines or whatever, and you had to go outside the gas station and get them. So we're certainly not there. And now we have pictures, and we have these Matterport walkthrough tours where it's literally like you can look inside the home, and you can go in with your cell phone and it'll give you house dimensions and things like that. So I would say that it's very beneficial for a buyer and for realtors. If you want to make a informed decision, you can sit there and measure out the house just by sitting in the comfort of your home.
You talked when our guests were on the show, you talked about buyer's agent versus seller's agent. Talk to me about what the roles, and do you play both of those roles in given transactions?
I do.
Tell me what a buyer's agent does versus what a seller's agent does.
Yeah, so a buyer's agent, I think you're holding their hand. You're obviously going and showing them houses, trying to find houses that you think are in their budget, that they'll like. They'll describe to you what they want, and you're on the search as well as they are. And I think sometimes, depending on the price point, or if you say, well, that property is really priced well, you may need to show them at 8:30 at night because they need to see it if they really like it. So I think along the way, you're guiding them through inspections, you're guiding them through the appraisal process, you're helping out with their lender if you need to. So I think all those things, just from starting to show the house to ending up at the closing, I think you need to hold their hand. And then for sellers, I think that you need to make them understand what their house is worth. We pull comps and do kind of what an appraiser does. So we see, you can have 3 appraisers and they can all say a different price, but at the end you have to have the data to be able to show them, or show the appraiser when the house is under contract. So you tell them about the curb appeal, what things they can do to improve the property, and then I think marketing is very important. Getting professional pictures and just marketing the heck out of the property is very, very important. And then of course you're negotiating contracts and obviously guiding them to the table at settlement. So
interesting. As clients look to hire a real estate agent, whether they're the buyer or the seller, what types of things should they look for in a contract with a real estate agent, a real estate agency?
Well, what I tell people when I go to their house, and Cynthia Sullivan, this is what she says, and this is for the whole company at Sullivan Select, but when someone goes into your house and they're new and they're a realtor, they're a new person, you never met them before, or you heard about them, or you saw them in a magazine, you call them up. And they come to your house and they'll, they talk real nice to you and they compliment you on your house and all that, but you really don't know that person. You really don't know that they're going to work hard for you. You don't know that they're going to have your best interest in mind, and it's a very big decision, sometimes the biggest financial decision that people will make in their lifetimes, one to be taken seriously. So, but a lot of these contracts that you make with either a buyer's agent or a seller's agent, they will lock you in. They'll lock you in for maybe a 1-year term. And what I would say, and Cynthia as well, was you can cancel with 1-day oral notice, meaning that it's my promise to you that I will do my job. If I do not, the money I spent, the time I spent, any effort, it's out the window if you decide that I'm not doing the job. And that's kind of an insurance policy I think that you need. I think that you don't need to hear a lot of really good things, and then a lot of people will want to compliment you on your house, put a sign in your yard, and just hope somebody else sells it. But I think it's important that you're able to feel, 1, that you can trust this person, 2, that they're knowledgeable, they're capable, and then 3, communicate. I think it's very important. to communicate a lot. So, yeah.
From your perspectives, from a buyer's perspective, what are the biggest stumbling blocks that people run into in a real estate transaction?
You know, I think a lot of people don't even know how to get started. They would like to buy a house, but it's kind of like, well, what do I do, and where do I go from here, and how do I call a lender, and some things like that. So I think that seeing what their financial picture, a lot of people don't know what their credit score is. They don't really know what they can afford. So I think just taking the first steps and guiding someone in that process. And I think when you're looking for a home, I usually tell people that there's about 90% that you're going to get has the dream home factor, and then there's 10% that you're not going to, you're going to have to live with. So you have to really make a list of what are the things I have to have, and what are the things I can live with. Because every house, unless you're building on the most perfect spot and the most perfect house, that's not reality for most people. So I would say that make a list of 90% of what you really, really want to have, and then when you think you found that house, write it all down and figure out if you can live with that 10. Because if you go in the house and you say, I love it, but I don't love the floor plan, you're going to hate that floor plan in 2 years. And you're going to call me to sell it again because you don't like it. If it's the wall color, go ahead, buy the house. But I just figure on the 90% of what you love, and you'll be happy.
Excellent. So you talked about some of the pre-work, can we afford this? What can we afford? Is that something, as a buyer's agent, you would help people through? At what point do you enter the transaction? Have they already gone through that?
It just depends. Some of them have been talking to a lender already, and they are pre-approved. They'll call and say, I'm pre-approved, I'd like to start the home search.
And that's a good thing, to get pre-approved?
It's a very good thing, yes.
Okay,
You need to know what your financial picture looks like, because if you're looking at houses and you have a champagne taste on a beer budget, it's very disappointing.
Don't we all have that?
Yes, we all do.
Okay.
But it's very disappointing to fall in love with a house that you cannot buy. So definitely you want to look at everything realistically and see what you can afford. Sometimes you're very surprised.
Yeah. From a seller's perspective, what is the risk there? What, other than having fraud on your buyers, what are the risks that they face that you run into from time to time?
Yeah, well, I think sometimes you can, there's surprises that come up on the home inspection, that things that they weren't thinking of, or sometimes there's an appraisal bust that you think, wow, we're off here, and the appraiser doesn't see it, or there's mistakes made on the appraisal that we have to kind of fight for. So there's the occasional buyer that backs out. It's very rare, knock on wood, but it has happened. And
yes, it has.
Yeah, it has. It has. So I think it's a wild ride, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Sometimes it's very stressful and not that fun. So I think as agents, it's we're there to guide the hand and kind of make it as easy as possible. So,
what do you predict for the real estate market in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, they're saying interest rates are going to be
I
lower.
heard that rumor.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. But if I could get my crystal ball out, I would spell it all out for you. But I think I think things have stabilized, and interest rates still are not 18% where they were many years ago.
In the 70s and early 80s.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think that things are stabilizing, and so I think interest rates are going to drop. That's what they're saying. So.
Are there any long-term trends you foresee that could shape the real estate market in the coming years?
That's a good question. I do think that we're seeing more with technology, and so I think I think there's going to be changes. I think that the Real Estate Commission changed the buyer agency just this past summer, and so they changed the Real Estate Commission, the whole structure of that, and so that changed. So I think that we're just having to adjust and see what the markets are, and just kind of adjust as things come upon.
Our guests earlier presented a story which was not a happy story, but it was a touching story, and hopefully it has a happy ending. Can you talk, is there another real estate transaction, without mentioning names or places, that sticks out in your mind that as just particularly successful or unique?
I think sometimes the bad ones really stand out. The ones where the day of settlement, you're cleaning trash in the driveway, or some of those make for the funniest stories. But a couple transactions ago, we had some first-time home buyers, and I was representing the sellers again, and they were in their 60s, and they had rented all their lives. And the husband was in a wheelchair, and they were buying a home that was going to have to be restructured a little to accommodate him. But they were the sweetest couple, and they had worked so hard their entire lives to save up for this house. So at the settlement table, there was not a dry eye, and it made everything real rewarding. So those are the days I really like.
As you look around Washington County, what are the sought-after neighborhoods or areas in Washington County right now?
Well, there's a lot of them. So it depends. I mean, obviously, there's Fountainhead and all the Black Rock and all the fancy places, Brightwood Acres East and all those. But I think that there's a lot of smaller subdivisions that are cropping up, and a lot of people after COVID, they just wanted to have a garden and be able to live on their own and get a few chickens. So I think desirable is kind of, it's retrofitted to the person and what they want. But
Relative term.
yes, relative.
Homeowners associations, you mentioned chickens.
Mm-hmm.
I see that question a lot, and I hear people talk about it. What's your theory on that?
Oh, that's a mixed bag. So some people don't want to pay, they don't want to pay the monthly fee, and that can be a bad thing, that takes more money out of your pocket. But if you live in a development and you have neighbors, it's kind of an insurance policy to know that they're not going to do some crazy stuff right next to you and decrease your property values. So I think if you live in a neighborhood, I think it's probably a good thing. You want that.
Okay. Tracy, thank you for staying with us for the last segment.
My pleasure.
I think we got a lot of good information. I appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you bringing your buyers on to tell their story.
Yeah, no.
And remember that I hope our viewers will remember that GoFundMe account is available through July 18th.
Yes.
And if you're feeling generous and want to help a nice couple out, that would be a great thing to do.
Wonderful. Yes.
I hope you'll come back and see us. Maybe bring Cynthia, or bring when we hear the end of the story. I do want to hear
Yes,
those.
I hope it's
those
a good
buyers.
one.
Yes. Well, hopefully we'll know her very soon.
Yes.
That's all the time we have for tonight. We hope you will like us on Facebook. We hope you will follow us on X, formerly Twitter. We hope you will send us your comments and suggestions to feedback@flipsidetv.com. That's feedback@flipsidetv.com. Most importantly, join us again next week for another trip to the flip side. Good night.